Was there a point in the investigation of John O'Keefe's death where Yuri Buchanan was looking at different leads and then somehow got roped back into following Proctor down the Karen Read path? Now, I'm not trying to excuse Yuri's behavior, so stick with me. That's not what this is about. In fact, I'm going to make a case against him in a minute. But we all know Proctor has been fired, and he is a shameful person who deserves to be publicly mocked for the rest of his life. I hope he never gets a moment of peace. The bigger problem is that John O'Keefe will never, ever get justice because of Michael Proctor's actions. But I'm wondering, should Yuri have been fired too? And yeah, I think he should have, but let's talk through this. See, Yuri testified that they were together all day. And he got up on the stand and said, this was all very honorable. We followed all the evidence. We did all of that. If he ever admits that there was a time where he and Michael Proctor weren't together and Michael Proctor went off and did things on his own, then Yuri takes the fall because that makes Yuri a bad supervisor. He wasn't keeping an eye on his guy when his guy went rogue. If they're together, then Yuri has to say, but we did a great job. Because if he ever says for a minute that Proctor did anything wrong while they were together, well, then Yuri did it too. But there was a moment where Yuri did something different that would have taken him down a different path. And then he made a conscious decision not to follow that path. Back up to about 9:30 a.m. Proctor and Buchanan show up at the Canton PD. We hear on the stand from Yuri that they talked to Good. You know, Good has the goods because Good was at the scene. So it was Good, Mullaney, Seraph, and Gallagher. And Lank. They were all at the scene that morning. You got 5 officers who've all said, you know, here's what we saw. Here's the wounds to John. Nothing about Karen talking about hitting him. So you've got 5 police officers who are all kind of saying that exact same thing. So that's track 1. That is the follow the evidence of a guy that maybe looks like it got in a fight and died in the cold. Whether he was stumbling home from a bar or whatever, he died in the cold. That's track 1. Track 2 comes when Higgins and Lank arrive back at the station. So remember, at 9 a.m., Officer Lank got a call from Jen McCabe. He was called back to 34 Fairview so she could amend her statement. So he goes to the home. Brian Higgins is already there because there's that family powwow where they all had to get their story together. So Higgins is already there. He's there when Lank comes back. So Lank goes and gets an amended statement, and then I would assume goes back to the PD. Yuri testifies that along the lines of Trail 1, Good showed them the evidence. They saw the cocktail glass. They saw the red Solo cups with a couple of droplets of blood in it. And he says that was when we also got possession of John O'Keefe's cell phone. So he claims, I'm assuming, that Good gave it to him. Maybe. And again, he's trying to follow the evidence. So he says on the stand, we knew after that conversation that we had to go talk to some witnesses, and then we also had a statement that the girlfriend thought she might have hit him. Well, that didn't come from any of those 5 officers. So it had to have come from Lank's return when he had Jen McCabe's amended statement, or it had to come from Higgins. Both of them went back to the station after being at 34 Fairview. So what happens is you've got, Lank may not have even said anything. Lank may have just said, oh yeah, Jen McCabe changed her statement, and here's the new verbiage. And Higgins is right there to go, yep, I was there, I heard her say it. So now you've got 2 people, 2, witnesses saying that Karen's worried she may have hit him. And you probably got Higgins right there being like, oh yeah, that relationship was so fucking volatile, it wouldn't surprise me. Now there's also a very big possibility. A lot of people think that Higgins brought the cell phone to Canton PD and that's how they got the cell phone, but I don't know, I don't have any proof of that. But here's what's interesting. Yuri testifies that that's where the evidence takes them. Well, they go talk to some people. Proctor calls Jen McCabe at about 11 o'clock in the morning, according to her time frame, and says, I got to talk to you. Where can we interview? She says, meet me at my house. And we know, she says those interviews took place between like 11:30 and noon at her house, okay? And he interviewed her and her husband, and Brian Albert was there. Like, that's when they conducted all the interviews. They did them at the McCabe household. But before that, before Proctor could call those witnesses, remember, we got 2 tracks here. Before Proctor could call those witnesses and follow path 2, this one, all of this information that was received from those 5 other officers, at 10:41, Yuri Buchanan makes a phone call to the medical examiner's operations center at Good Samaritan Hospital. And it's often that the police work with the medical examiner to try and solve the crime, right? So they're gonna call the medical examiner and say, here's some things we recovered. You might wanna think about this as you're doing the examination. He tells the medical examiner, and these are all like quotes written in my notes from last year, that this was suspicious, that the victim was struck in the face with a cocktail glass, that it was a domestic incident, and that it was a physical altercation. At 10:41 in the morning, Yuri seems to be following this path where this was a domestic incident because he's calling the medical examiner and saying, this is the injuries to John O'Keefe. Meanwhile, Proctor has made it possible for them to follow this path to go interview people and see if Karen Read hit him. At some point, Yuri gives up on path A and goes along with Proctor on path B. And there were plenty of times where Yuri knew that the evidence wasn't there, right? You heard him in court. Proctor by himself finding pieces of taillight and then logging them in. Like, he knew that things were going wrong and he went along with it anyway. And he should have gotten fired as well. But it wasn't just the critical decision to ignore that first set of evidence. Along the way, Yuri allowed, as his supervisor, he allowed Proctor to fuck up so many things. Okay, I need to go to a second video because, again, the case against Yuri Buchanan is so strong. This guy just lost 5 vacation days. He should have lost his career. He should have lost his pension. I think the federal investigation should turn toward both Proctor and Buchanan because at some point, Yuri made a conscious decision to be a participant and not stop it. And that's why I want to do a video too, because there's so many other things that went wrong that Yuri could have stepped in and fixed and didn't. So come back for video 2.